Welcome back to Steel Bear Academy. My name is Jonathan. Today I want to answer a question that I get quite frequently, and it's usually by people who are new to guns who ask this question, and it's in regard to carrying a gun, on your person, whether it's concealed or open or, just kind of having a gun on them. The question is, should I carry with a round in the chamber? So what they're asking here is, if they have a semi-auto gun, this is usually what they're referring to. If they have a semi-auto gun or auto-loading gun, they're asking, should I carry with a loaded magazine and a round put into the chamber, meaning the gun is ready to fire, like so? Or should they keep a full magazine but no round in the chamber? So the chamber would be clear, they have a magazine in the gun, and the gun is carried in this manner. What they would have to do is pull the gun out, chamber around, and then the gun would be ready to fire. Basically, they're asking, should I have my gun in a ready-to-fire condition where all it has to do is pull the trigger? Well, I think the answer in my mind is yes, so long as you are confident with your trigger discipline and you are very safe and diligent with your holster choice and your holstering and reholstering and unholstering. Basically, are you trying to be as safe as possible, and are you keeping good practices to keep yourself safe? That's the only caveat that I would give. So why would I say you should carry with a round in the chamber? Well, if you are carrying your gun for self-defense, the only time your gun should ever come out of its holster, except for the end of your day and the beginning of your day, as far as I'm concerned, is when you are going to use it to save your life or the life of, whether save the life of somebody around you or your loved one or whatever. The only time your gun should ever be touched or come out of your holster is that time. And if you need it in that moment, you are going to have to pull it out of the holster. If you didn't have a round in the chamber, you would have to chamber around and then go do whatever it is you were going to do. That takes time. That's kind of a large step that is it's very easy to fumble it, especially in life and death situation where you are literally needing it right that second to save your life. That's there's a very high likelihood that you'll mess that up. So for me, it's a matter of simplicity. I don't want to have to do that in the moment. I want my gun to be ready to fire as soon as I want it to be ready to fire all the time. The same reason I don't want a safety on a gun. I don't want to have to remember to do some step, even just one little step, just a flick down of the thumb. That's too much in my mind. That's too much stuff to remember. And it's very likely that somebody's going to mess it up. Now, I know people are going to say, oh, well, I always do it every time I draw my gun, or I always make sure I turn my safety on or off. I would say to those people, they have not practiced enough and they have not watched enough people shoot guns with safeties to know that. Because I think if they actually did practice doing that under stress and watching lots of people do it, they would see many, many, many times where somebody pulls their gun out, has a safety on, they go to fire, doesn't work, turn the safety on, then it fires. It's the same kind of thing with this. As far as I'm concerned, if you're going to be carrying your gun for defensive purposes, it should be ready to go, not have any steps in between, except for just pulling it out of your holster and pointing it in the direction you need to fire and pointing at the target you need to fire at. The thing that I think is at the heart of why people ask this question is because it goes back to that they're new. It goes back to that they're new and they really don't want to make a mistake with this new thing that they're doing, handling guns, let's say. And that's a healthy thing to think. That's a healthy caution to have. We're dealing with life and death choices whenever we are handling or touching or around guns at all. And so it's a very healthy thing to have that caution, that understanding of the stakes. The stakes are very high anytime you are touching a gun. And I think new people have both a better and worse understanding of the stakes at the same time. Many people who have done it for a long time are either really aware of the stakes or they get a little complacent. So it could go either way. But for the new people, here's what I would suggest for you to get comfortable with the thought of having a round in the chamber. Again, I'll reiterate, I think you should have a round in the chamber because it is the best method for which you can use your gun immediately and not have to worry about having an extra step or any steps that could get in the way of you protecting yourself in that critical moment. So here's what I would recommend. For one, I want you to get very comfortable with your trigger discipline. This is something that a lot of new people, this is like the main thing that new people need to work on is their trigger discipline, meaning keeping their finger off the trigger until they're on target and decide to shoot. So that means anytime you're picking your gun up, your finger should be along the side like this until your sights are on the target and you've decided to shoot. That's when you can put your finger on the trigger, bang. Bang. Okay? That's the main thing that determines whether or not your gun fires. That's probably like 99.99% of whether or not your gun fires or not. The other 0.00001% of the time that we're talking about guns firing is accidentally happening. And that can happen in many different ways, but it is rarely, meaning almost never, the gun just accidentally the gun just spontaneously going off. That happens so infinitesimally small number of times that it's not worth worrying about. When somebody does have a negligent discharge, it is almost always negligence. It is almost always somebody put their finger on the trigger or they got something into the trigger guard on their gun and let something else pull the trigger, whether that's the bunching up of their shirt or a drawstring or a twig or a branch or something like that. And that type of thing is important to be considered, to really consider and to try to have good habits to try to avoid that ever happening. It really starts with picking a holster that fits your gun and covers the trigger guard. So this holster actually is for a Glock 17. This is a 26, but you'll get the idea. So when I insert this gun into the holster, it's going to totally cover the trigger guard so nothing can get in there. Nothing's going to accidentally pull the trigger. And it's intended to fit this gun, so it's not going to wiggle around. This gun is pretty darn secure in there. When it's on my body, when I go to holster this gun, I want to make sure that I try to minimize anything getting into the trigger guard as best as I possibly can. First thing, you want to make sure your other hand and your body is out of the way of the muzzle as much as possible. Sometimes that is not possible, but it is almost always possible. So that means you want to kind of arch your body a little this way. If your holster is on the side of your body over here, arch your body a little this way. Make sure you clear your cover garment and keep it out of the way and keep your hand out of the way. Insert your gun, finger off the trigger, into your holster, going slowly until it clicks into place. Reholstering or putting your gun into the holster is a time when you should be going very slowly. There's really no reason to go fast. The scenario where you need to go fast is so rare, not worth practicing. The dangerous part about holstering a gun is when you are taking the gun out and when you are putting the gun back in. Those are the two most dangerous times. So go slow, take your time, there's no rush. Here's something I recommend for the new people. Let's say you feel comfortable with how to draw your gun out of the holster and put it back into the holster. If you're still not comfortable with keeping a round in the chamber, for one, I'd recommend just give it time. If you feel like you want to keep a round out of the chamber for a while, it's okay. Look, it's not my gun. I'm not making the choices for you. You're making your own choices. If you want to choose to do that and have the potential downside that I talked about earlier, yeah, you go for it. It's not like it's incredibly rare, incredibly unlikely that that would have a downside for you. It's very rare. So if you need some time to just get comfortable with it, take your time. But here's something you can do to help speed up your confidence in your gun and your holstering and your carrying a gun process. If you want to practice that most dangerous time and kind of try to see how hard it is to accidentally pull your trigger, here's something that I would recommend you do if you want to. I'm not going to tell you to do it, but this is something that I could see being helpful for somebody who wants to like kind of practice without just taking time, just letting it kind of draw out. Learning through just straight up time elapsing. Here's what I recommend doing. Have your gun totally unloaded, no rounds in the gun at all. Have your gun in whatever condition it would normally be sitting in your holster in. And just practice holstering your gun many, many times and see if on all those times, does your gun click? Does it accidentally pull the trigger? Now, if you're doing everything correctly, that should pretty much never happen. Again, it can happen, and that's why we try to do those good methods of clearing the cover garment, looking down into your holster, making sure there's nothing in there before you slowly insert your gun into the holster. If you are doing all those things, it should never happen. That's why we have all those methods of trying to minimize that risk. Now again, for crazy things can happen, and unfortunately that's just kind of the nature of the world. Sometimes something could go wrong, but if you train to do it perfectly, as perfect as possible, hopefully when those crisis moments come, you've at least done it enough times in the good way that you can avoid having the bad way, right? The bad way come out. So the reason I recommend practicing that way is because I think that a lot of the new people just don't have confidence that their gun is not going to just go off. So if you practice that holstering and reholstering with an unloaded gun many times, hopefully it will help you recognize that the only way the gun can fire is if the trigger's pulled. And if I'm doing a good job holstering and reholstering, once the gun's in the holster, it's basically impossible. It's not going to happen. It's so unlikely that it's going to happen, to accidentally fire the gun, that you don't need to worry about it. It's the getting the gun into and out of that position that's the dangerous part, right? So if you are new and you want to practice getting accustomed to that dangerous part, practice with a totally unloaded gun, reholstering, unholstering in the comfort of your home, obviously, and try to do it without anyone around you and don't have any ammo in the room, no ammo in the gun. I cannot stress that enough. No ammo in the gun. And just do lots and lots of holstering. Okay? Now I'm kind of muzzling myself a little bit, and that's unintentional. I have to do that for the holstering demonstration, but you understand what I'm saying. If it was attached to your belt, you're trying to holster and reholster without the trigger being pulled, if that makes sense. And again, if you keep doing this, it should help you get comfortable with the fact that your holster and your gun, it doesn't just fire. It's caused by something happening wrong. And that's what you're trying to avoid. You're trying to make it so that nothing wrong happens along this little dangerous time where you're taking the gun out, putting the gun back in. It comes with time. And like I said, if you want to just take some time, don't carry it around in the chamber. Hey, it's your gun. It's your life. Do whatever keeps you safe and helps you get comfortable, and be safe. Have good trigger discipline. Keep your gun pointed in a safe direction. All those things, right? Hopefully this has been helpful for you. If you have any questions or comments, post them down below. Maybe talk about, were you once scared of having a round in the chamber, and what helped you to get to a point where you could keep your eye on the chamber and trust that it was not going to just fire. Thank you very much for listening. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.